After World War II, the world put the Nazis on trial at Nuremberg. We all know that story. But what about the industrial engine that powered their entire war machine? Today, we're diving into a story that's often overlooked, the monumental trial of the corporate titans who armed the Third Reich.
Our story starts with a man who thought his war was already over. This is Josiah DuBois. And you gotta understand, he wasn't just some random lawyer. As chief counsel for the Treasury Department, he'd already spent years leading the financial war against the Axis. He was the guy who froze IG Farben's American assets, the one who united 20 nations against their global cartel. He was called the best qualified man in the United States for this fight. And honestly, he was exhausted. So when the call came to go to Nuremberg, his immediate reaction to his wife was, nope, not doing it.
So what changes? What pulls a man like that back into the fire? Well, that's what we're going to explore. This is the incredible story of how one reluctant but uniquely qualified man took on an industrial Goliath, a company whose power was matched only by its partnership with a murderous regime. This is Josiah DuBois versus IG Farben.
To really get what this trial was about, you first have to understand the defendant. And believe me, this was no ordinary defendant. IG Farben wasn't just a company, it was a corporate empire, basically a state within a state. The name IG Farben was a global powerhouse, but their connection to the Nazis went way, way deeper than just doing business. As DuBois would argue in court, they were the architects, the Machiavellian planners of military aggression, completely and willingly entangled in Hitler's entire vision of conquest. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this thing. We are talking about a global network of 880 firms. They didn't just supply the Nazi war machine, they were the war machine. They controlled the synthetic fuel and rubber that made the Blitzkrieg possible. They systematically plundered industries all across occupied Europe. And then, there's that last point. They built, owned, and operated a factory at Auschwitz. This wasn't just business. This was a full-blown partnership in conquest.
So DuBois eventually accepted the job, but the task in front of him was just immense. He and his team were faced with a mountain of evidence, and I mean that literally, over 100 tons of discarded, chaotic records. Their mission was to dig through all that chaos and find the proof that would finally unmask the men behind this corporate monster.
So, as American soldiers are rolling through Bavaria, they come across this guy named Otto Ambros, and he greets them with this really disarming, folksy charm. He tells them, "Oh, I'm just a plain chemist." He was so friendly, the GIs actually thought he was great. He got them soap, they hadn't washed in a month, they saw him as a welcome friend.
And this right here, this shows you the core challenge DuBois was up against. These men weren't fanatics foaming at the mouth. They were civilized, educated scientists and family men. Otto Ambros, the plain chemist, was actually a powerful director at IG Farben. His folksy charm was a mask for the man who ran a factory built entirely on slave labor from concentration camps. Tearing off that mask was the only way the prosecution could win.
DuBois's whole case was built on this revolutionary idea that this was a new kind of war. It wasn't just fought by armies, it was a conquest by corporate plunder, an industrial robbery on a scale the world had never seen, all planned in boardrooms years before the first shot was ever fired. But to prove it, they needed a smoking gun. So the hunt for that evidence leads them to Heidelberg, to the home of IG Farben's chairman, a man named Hermann Schmitz. And as the investigators are tearing his house apart, Schmitz is just sitting there calmly, questioning their authority, acting like this is all just a minor annoyance. After hours of getting nowhere, Schmitz finally points them to a small, hidden safe. And what the investigators found inside would become a cornerstone of the entire case. And it wasn't just a document, it was a trophy. Get this, it wasn't some hidden ledger, it was a photo album. A beautifully crafted, wooden inlaid photo album given as a gift celebrating the achievements of their factory at Auschwitz. The first pages had these ugly caricatures of the old Jewish part of town, followed by these grand architectural plans for the new Auschwitz works. This wasn't just proof they were involved, this was proof they were proud of what they were doing at a death camp. This factory was known as Monowitz, or Auschwitz III. It was IG Farben's baby, a massive industrial plant designed to fuel the German war effort. And its workforce? A constant rotating supply of human beings from the camp next door, treated as nothing more than disposable parts in a giant chemical machine.
So what was the real cost of these achievements that Hermann Schmitz had in his nice little photo album? 25,000. That's the estimated number of slave laborers who collapsed from starvation, disease, and exhaustion at Monowitz every single month. And when they collapsed, they were just sent back to the main camp to be murdered.
Armed with this absolutely horrifying evidence, DuBois brings 24 of IG Farben's top directors to trial. The courtroom itself was in Nuremberg, a city still in ruins, a pretty fitting backdrop for a trial against the men who helped make that devastation happen. But DuBois was about to find out that this battle wouldn't just be about facts, it would be about politics.
You see, as the trial was just getting started, the world was already changing. The alliance that had defeated Hitler was cracking apart. The shadow of Nazi Germany was fading and was being replaced by a new fear that was sweeping across America and Europe, the fear of Soviet communism.
And this quote from General Lucius D. Clay, the American military governor in Germany, just says it all. DuBois's team argued these men were war criminals, but the defense said they were just patriots doing their jobs. And suddenly, powerful people back in Washington started getting nervous, thinking, wait a minute, if we convict these industrialists for rearming their country, what happens to our CEOs in a future war against the Soviets?
The verdicts, when they came down, were just a stunning blow for DuBois and his team. 10 of the 24 defendants were acquitted. They just walked free. Of the 13 who were found guilty, the longest sentence was just 8 years. Otto Ambros, the plain chemist of Auschwitz, he got 8 years. The average sentence was less than 3. Justice, it seemed, had been totally compromised.
For Josiah DuBois, this was so much more than a legal defeat. He saw the verdict as a dangerous warning, a terrifying sign that the world was about to repeat its worst mistakes because it was already forgetting why the war was fought in the first place.
DuBois was convinced the light sentences came from a new American foreign policy. He called it the bulwark policy. The idea was simple. We needed a strong, rebuilt West Germany to be a bulwark against communism. And what was the fastest way to get German industry back on its feet? Well, you put the experienced managers back in charge, even if they were convicted war criminals from IG Farben.
And this was DuBois' ultimate fear. In his own words, in this mad rush to face a new enemy, he saw America empowering the exact same corporate and industrial powers that made World War II possible. The lessons that were learned in blood and fire were being thrown away for political convenience.
And that really is the question that lingers, isn't it? The story of the Devil's Chemists is this stark reminder of just how fragile the line between justice and politics can be. It forces us to ask, what happens when accountability becomes a liability? And who is it that ultimately pays the price when the lessons of history are forgotten?